Good evening. My name is Steve Worthington. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem for the City of University Place. And this evening I'll be the chair for tonight's meeting in Mayor Carolyn Belisi's absence. She's unable to attend this evening. With that, I'm calling the regular meeting of the University Place City Council for Tuesday, January 19th, 2021 to order. We're conducting our meeting remotely in compliance with the Special Open Meetings Act rules issued by Governor Inslee's emergency order. And if the city clerk would please conduct the roll.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Figueroa.
Councilmember Figueroa, present.
Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel, present.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee.
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, present.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember McCluskey, present.
Councilmember Fleming.
Councilmember Fleming here.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington here.
Mayor Belisi.
And with that, I would entertain a motion to excuse Mayor Belisi this evening.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Keel, I move that we excuse Mayor Belisi.
Councilmember Figueroa, second.
Very good. There's been a motion and a second. If there's no objections, we will excuse Mayor Belisi from attending this evening's meeting. And I'll move on to going over this evening's rules. Before we begin our meeting, we have a few special rules in place as a remote meeting operation. And we want to go over that with everyone. So first, participation and public comments will be accepted by the following methods. First, written comments, testimony will be continue to be accepted via email up until 5:30 this evening. We're actually past that time now. Any comments that have been received by 5:30 will have been or will be distributed to the City Council members for their consideration. Item 2 is subject to technological limitations. The council will also accept telephonic comments, testimony, by calling the number listed on the agendas. That number is 1-509-342-7253. And the conference ID to participate is 600-532-640 #. For members of the public who are calling in, please be advised that your call will be taken in the order received. To ensure order, your microphone will be muted until you've been recognized to speak. You'll be recognized by the last 4 digits of your phone number. At that time, you'll be asked to unmute your mic, and you can do that by pressing *6. Thank you. So secondarily, for council members, as we've done previously and as is our custom, we'll be using the round robin method for our speaking order. And please refer to that. It's been distributed as typical with our agenda. We may, in our study session, go to raised hands method, but during the regular meeting, we'll be using round robin. With that, I would like to invite Councilmember McCluskey to please, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, I would. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember. And then we're off and running, so to speak. Our next order of business is approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Keel, I move approval of our agenda.
Councilmember Figueroa, seconds.
Very good. We have a motion and a second for approval. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the agenda is approved for this evening. And let's see, we have tonight, top of that agenda, a presentation And I would like to invite Dr. Anthony Chen from the Director of Health for Tacoma Pierce County Health Department to speak to us. I think Dr. Chen is with us, though at the moment I can't quite tell.
Yes, I'm here.
We have him. Ah, wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Chen. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us, and looking forward to hearing your comments. As always, we're both for the council and for the community. Let's see, is there any visuals that need to be shown as well, or is it pretty much a oral presentation?
I have a PowerPoint. I don't know if my staff sent it to your staff. If not, I can share my screen. Oh, there it is. Yeah.
All right. Very
Great.
good. Great. Dr. Chen, thank you. Look forward to hearing your comments.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. And good to see many of you again. And I see there's some new council members I haven't had a chance to meet. I was asked today to talk about vaccination and what's going on in Pierce County. This is an area of great concern and a lot of focus of many elected officials as well as residents of our county. So could I have the next slide, please? So these are goals for my presentation today is to help you understand the role that the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department plays in vaccination and vaccine distribution, what our responsibilities are. You've probably heard about this phase prioritization plan that the state has, and which mirrors the federal guidelines. And then we'll talk about phase 1A, which we were working on, and phase 1B, which the governor just announced. We have started to work on phase 1B. So next slide, please. So on this slide, it outlines the public health role. So our health department, the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department, is a local public health jurisdiction, and we work collaboratively with the Washington State Department of Health, just as the Department of Health works collaboratively with the CDC, Department of Health and Human Services, and federal entities. So the Department of Health provides the prioritization guidance for vaccine administration. It also decides, based on how much the state gets, how the vaccine is allocated and where it goes to which providers. The Department of Health licenses providers, and in this case, they also administer the enrollment of medical providers who want to deliver the vaccine. And so, they're basically managing the vaccine that comes into the state. They also are responsible for managing the vaccine data for the state. On the local level, we are working with providers. We encourage and we support them to get enrolled. The vaccine actually ships directly to the providers, but we make sure that there's good distribution and we support them. We work with multiple partners to make sure that if there are any gaps in accessibility or delivery, or other challenges, that we can ensure that there's timely vaccination of those who are eligible. A very important role for us is to provide accurate and reliable information to the public, and to engage with community partners to encourage vaccine uptake. Next slide, please. So there is limited vaccine supply currently, and so we expect this to improve. We know that of the two authorized vaccines in the U.S. right now, the factories continue to produce more. The supply should improve. We also know that there are several other companies in the pipeline. You've probably heard, AstraZeneca, Johnson & Johnson, that there are more coming online, hopefully in the near future. But until that happens, this is no different than, say, the latest video gaming console or, whatever, anything new, there's always going to be a short supply at first. It's unfortunately not quite a free market, or, people can't buy their way out of this. So we have to help prioritize about who gets the vaccine when. The phase 1 goal is to protect those most at risk and the healthcare capacity as well as some of the essential functions in our society. And based on that, there's a phased distribution approach, and broad community distribution will not occur until phases 3 and 4. So we just went to phase 1B. Could I have the next slide, please? So one of the things that people can be assured of is that we're not building this from scratch, okay? I mean, first of all, we have been planning for pandemics for years. I mean, when I started my job 12 years ago, within 6 months, we had the H1N1 pandemic, and we had all kinds of emergency plans written already for that, and then H1N1 blew us out of the water, overwhelmed us, went on for 10 months, and we learned a whole lot about pandemics from that. So coming into COVID-19, our plans were much better. We were much more confident about what we were doing, and we knew what to do. Of course, it's still blowing our socks off. I mean, it is still very difficult and challenging. But in terms of the emergency response side, we had plans for that. Also, in terms of vaccination, we fortunately have this very strong, it's called Vaccines for Children program. You may or may not be aware, Washington is one of only about 2 states which, in addition to the federal Vaccines for Children program, we are quite unique in that the state of Washington purchases every single vaccination for children in the state of Washington. Doesn't matter if you're Medicaid or whether you've got Blue Cross, Regents, or you're a Kaiser patient, every single dose in the state of Washington is purchased by the state of Washington and distributed to medical providers for free. In exchange for participation in the state program and the Vaccines for Children's programs, providers must meet certain criteria and they need to apply for enrollment. No one wants this valuable resource to get wasted if someone doesn't store it properly, or if some provider doesn't know how to give the vaccine properly. So for years, we have had a lot of experience working with providers, and they've gotten very good at it. You have to monitor the temperature in your refrigerators. They know how to put in the orders through the state system. Vaccine gets shipped directly to the provider. Just so many different steps. And some vaccines are given subcutaneously, some are given intramuscularly, some have to be frozen, some are just refrigerated. They have to know how to handle every different kind of vaccine. So we have a lot of experience. The providers have a lot of experience. We also have a state immunization registry. Not all states have that, but Washington has had one for years. So all of this is infrastructure, experience, and practice that providers in Washington State and in Pierce County have had. So as through this process, Department of Health will order the vaccine on behalf of enrolled providers from CDC. All distribution occurs through established shipping and handling processes. They usually, just like you order from Amazon or any other company online now, things get delivered to you. Same thing happens. These companies know how to ship vaccine, and they know how to get it to the providers. Nationally, we're also keeping track. So far the 2 authorized vaccines require 2 doses. So we are accounting for the second dose. We want to make sure that people can get their second dose at the time they need to, a few weeks after the first dose. And as I mentioned earlier, there are extensive storage, handling, administration, and reporting requirements that go along with all this. Next slide, please. Here's the phased system that I talked about. As I mentioned, we went to phase 1B on January 18th. Tier 1 within 1B. Actually, this was changed on Monday, so we did not update this slide yet. I apologize. that first bullet should say people 65 years or older. There was a very short notice change on the federal level last Friday where they dropped this age to 65, and this has been mirrored in, actually, no, it's like 2 Fridays ago, I'm sorry. And so this was mirrored in the announcement the governor made on Monday. So tier 1, people 65, this is 1B1. These are people 65 years of age or older. And the second bullet is something which I'm very pleased to see. It's a nod to our diverse communities. These are people 50 years and older who live in multi-generational homes. We know that many racial ethnic groups value family, and they'll be the parents, the grandparents, and the kids all living together. And so we know that then infection can be transmitted within the household. This probably to some extent accounts also for why certain racial ethnic groups have higher rates of infection. There are many other factors as well. And certainly, for some of those on the lower end of our socioeconomic scale, they're doing that out of necessity, right? That many generations live together. So I was really glad to see that the Department of Health included that in tier 1. And then the next tier, so this is 1B2, are high-risk critical workers over age 50. These are everyone from law enforcement to grocery store, essential workers. I was glad to see that Department of Health moved teachers and school staff into this category as well. And so those would, for example, I was just speaking with one of the school district boards before I joined your meeting here, so that this would mean that their teachers and staff over age 50 would go with 1B2. Tier 3 then are people 16 years and older with multiple underlying health conditions. Tier 4 are the rest of those high-risk critical workers, those under age 50, and then people living or receiving services in a congregate setting. So that might be anything from like a homeless shelter, or to prisons, for example, right? So and in certain parts of our state, this would include, our farm workers who often live in congregate settings. So this is what our phasing looks like. You'll notice that there's a very clear pattern. If you look at this, they're trying to address kind of almost alternating the people who are at high risk with the people who work with them, right? So tier 1 are the people, tier 2 are the workers, tier 3 are the people again, tier 4 are a combination of both. So it's a way for us trying to prioritize those who are at greatest risk of getting the disease and having bad outcomes, as well as those at greatest risk due to their occupation of contracting and being exposed to COVID-19. Next slide, please. So as we talk about who can get the vaccine, right? I mean, we're still wrapping up phase 1. So phase 1A, tier 1, where, I think this is fairly obvious, no argument about, that they should be in the front of the line, the high-risk workers in healthcare settings, high-risk first responders, and then those who are long-term care residents and staff. So those are like nursing homes, rehab, and so on. Phase 1A, tier 2, were all other workers in healthcare settings. Next slide, please. And so you can see in 1A, this was very much worked through vaccination through healthcare systems, hospitals, clinics. EMS was doing some vaccination, and with care facilities. So, some providers were enrolled and eligible for dispensing the vaccine. We helped to get clinics get enrolled and stand up the infrastructure. There's a separate federal program where they paired pharmacies, so the large chain pharmacies with long-term care facilities to vaccinate the residents. There's a term we use called drop teams, and we probably should think of a better term to use than that. But Those are teams of nurses and other staff who can go into a facility and help vaccinate their staff. And you notice that for this group, doing mass vaccination drive-through clinics, while we have done some, are less useful for this group, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense for doctors and nurses to be waiting in long lines of cars waiting to get vaccinated. We want to vaccinate them at their place of employment, get them in and out quickly, and same for EMS and so on. Next slide, please. And so this is kind of a continuation of what I was saying, that we've been working with pharmacies. We've had long-standing relationships with them. So, for example, during the H1N1 pandemic, pharmacies delivered a lot of the vaccinations for H1N1. And pharmacies are distributed much more than clinics. There are many communities where may not be a doctor's office, but there may be a pharmacy close by. And so we also did some high throughput clinics with that in partnership with the healthcare systems and the county's Department of Emergency Management. As kind of part of our planning, for example, the county every day has mobile testing sites and also some fixed testing sites. And as part of our planning, they actually administered flu vaccine at some of those testing sites in conjunction with a test, because we knew at some point we might pivot them or something similar to vaccination. So that was kind of a way for them to be practicing how to do that. We've been working on the education and information, focused on cultural competency, working with community leaders and disproportionately affected groups. Next slide, please. In phase 1B, we're going to continue to work with registered medical providers and clinics, and most of them will be working on an appointment basis. Now you're going to start seeing larger venues. So working with vaccination drive-through clinics, working with larger pharmacies as well as independent pharmacies to join the vaccination effort. Here you see that term again, the vaccine drop teams, where we will have staff who can go into businesses, residential facilities, schools, whatever, as needed to vaccinate. And we know that some local employers and school districts have expressed interest in hosting vaccination clinics. So the message here is we are working on multiple levels, planning a lot of different things. And if you don't see it quite yet now, doesn't mean we're not planning on it. That the planning is in the works. We'll be rolling out as appropriate and as we get the resources to do them. Next slide, please. So this slide's a little bit dated. The state reports its numbers to us once a week. I believe this week's numbers will come out tomorrow. So you can see this is from January the 9th. It's a little bit behind. At that time, you could see about 49,000 doses were allocated to Pierce County. About 21,000 were administered. However, if you remember what I said, that the long-term care facilities, that's through a federal program that had a little trouble getting off the ground. So part of this is the discrepancy between number of doses and the number of doses administered with the number of doses allocated has something to do with the fact that many of these doses that were held for the long-term care facilities were waiting for the program to gear up. We also know there's some data lag. As I mentioned, the vast majority of the 1A vaccination was done on a clinic basis. So there's often a lag between the time they give the shot and the time they enter into the statewide registry, and then it gets to the state and the state counts it. So the numbers are actually better than this, but I just want to assure you that everyone's doing their best to work as hard and as fast as they can to get the whatever vaccine they have available out. Next slide, please. So in that January 3rd to the 9th period, more than 5,000 people got their first dose. There's a little drop off in early January, but then there was as the supply chains improved, and then that number rebounded. We're currently now back around 1,000 doses being dispensed a day. Next slide. And then looking forward, we're hoping that we will get to that range of 70 to 80% of people in the county and in the state who either are immune from having been infected or been vaccinated, right? The vast majority of these are going to have to be vaccinated. In Pierce County, I believe it's something around 3% of our population has been infected. But we also know that in some countries where they've had very high rates of infection, they don't get to this community immunity. They just see a lot of deaths. And it's just impractical to think we're going to get enough infection out there to get the level of immunity we need. You probably heard that even after vaccination, people still need to take all the same precautions. They still need to wear a mask. They still need to stay home, limit their activity. They shouldn't be socializing as much as possible. They need to be keeping physically distanced 6 feet apart and so on. And there are various reasons for that, but people need to continue to do that, and certainly not until they need to continue until we get up to a 70-80% level of immunity in the community. So right there, in the meantime, keep wearing your face coverings, maintain your physical distance, stay home when you're sick, keep your gatherings small. If you develop symptoms, even if you've been vaccinated, you should get tested just to make sure that it's not COVID-19. Next slide, please. So I talked a lot. So at this point, I'd love to hear questions from you and respond to them.
So we probably have time for one or two quick questions. Let's see, Councilmember McCluskey, I see your hand is up, and followed by Councilmember Fleming.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you, Dr. Chin, for your wonderful presentation and the updates on the numbers. Your voice is always reassuring, which is helping, and the trends and the vaccination is hopeful. I heard rumors in our community in regard to the vaccination, and I would like you to make comment to that. And that is in regards that once you receive the COVID-19 vaccine, you can be asymptomatic and unknowingly spread to others. And I had not heard that, so I was wondering what your advice and answer to that question would be.
You're correct. There's that concern, and that is one of the reasons why you heard me say, even after the vaccination, people still need to wear masks, not travel, and so on and so forth. The tests show that the vaccines that have been authorized protect you from disease. They weren't designed to show whether they protect you from infection. Okay, so we know that there's some people who may be infected and have low-grade infections, but the vaccine gives you enough immunity to fight it off so that you don't really get sick. Okay. We know this is kind of a weird virus. We know some people have gotten sick twice. It does this weird thing with your immune system. So right now there has been some reports where people have gotten sick or recovered from it, so they're presumably immune, and they still have been able to transmit virus. Keep in mind, we've only known about this thing for about a year, right? I mean, the cold virus, the flu virus, Ebola, we've known about those for many years. So we're still learning a lot about this virus. So absolutely, I think the big thing with that is people just need to know that is part of the reason why you still need to follow all the precautions after you get the vaccine.
And my last question, Dr. Chin, is the vaccinations that is distributed from the different companies, are they similar or are they different? Is one better than the other, or what's your opinion on that?
So the two vaccines currently authorized have a similar technology, right? So the mRNA vaccines, no one has compared whether one is better than the other. They both have been shown to be safe and effective. You just cannot mix them, right? So if you get one Pfizer shot, the second shot has to be Pfizer. If you got one Moderna shot, the second shot's got to be Moderna. There are other vaccines coming out, which are also 2-dose vaccines. There's one which is a 1-dose vaccine. We'll just have to see what their efficacy looks like. And I'm sure the FDA will be looking at all of that. But right now, you have to remember, like, I mean, the two that authorized, they're felt to be about 95% or so effective. Compared to what we have now, I mean, even if you were, say, 70% effective, it's a lot better than not being having any protection, right? But of course, people will know that the FDA will look at that. We just haven't had time to do comparable, side-by-side studies.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Chen. Appreciate your answers.
They're happy to be here.
Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. And Dr. Chen, always great to see you, and thank you for being here tonight and sharing with us. I wanted to add one quick comment to Councilmember McCloskey's question, and that is, a lot of people will ask, are we immune after the second immunization? And the answer is no. That's not conveyed until roughly 2 weeks after that second immunization is given, and you certainly don't get any after the first immunization, or vaccine. So something to think about. Dr. Chen, what I wanted to ask you about is, in your presentation, you talked about the distribution centers, and those are limited, and we're currently vaccinating at the rate of 1,000 per day. The governor gave out a mandate, I believe it was yesterday or today, of how he wanted 400,000 citizens vaccinated by Saturday. How are we going to do that?
It's always important for us to set goals, right? I mean, whether it's sports or vaccination or your city budget, right? And we do our best, and whether we can meet that or not depends on a lot of factors, but we're always going to be working towards that goal. So, as I mentioned, the reason that the county council passed the budget request was because they saw the value of us gearing up, having a mass vaccination site. Now, honestly, I mean, it's not going to happen tomorrow, right? I mean, it'll probably come online towards the end of January, but we're building to that capacity. I mean, every day there are more providers are getting enrolled. The bottleneck right now is the supply, and so as the supply improves, as more vaccines get authorized, this will get better. And this is built on all the plans we had over the many years of pandemic planning. It's been built on the vaccines for children infrastructure. But we're improving that. So we're working in parallel tracks. We're not putting all our eggs in one basket. We've got multiple strategies we're working on. As I mentioned, like the mass vaccination was not a realistic strategy for 1A, but it will be going forwards. Right. And certainly by the time we get into the general distribution, it absolutely will be necessary for us to do mass vaccination. And working on relationships with schools and businesses to vaccinate through them takes time. So we're working towards it. And while I can't guarantee you we'll hit that number, we're aiming for that number, and we're doing the best we can. Appreciate it. And thank you. And thank you really to the folks over at the health department doing a yeoman's job there. So thank you. Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Councilmember Keel, do you have a brief question?
I do. I think it's brief. Dr. Chen, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for all the work that you do and your staff does to protect us in Pierce County. And we certainly appreciate all of that. I mean, our life depends on it. So we certainly appreciate that. The question I have is we hear about these new strands that are coming out of wherever they're coming out of, and my question is, do you think, does the current medicines that we have, are they effective against these new strands, one. And then the second question is, do you ever see the day that that this COVID-19 becomes more like the flu, really like the flu, where I mean, people get the flu all the time, and we've never, for a while it was pretty bad, but nowadays when you get the flu, it's okay, you got the flu, take a couple of these and you'll be fine, or even like polio. So do you ever see it, COVID-19 going along those lines in the future?
Yeah, I think, first part of your question about the new variants, it's not going to change what we do. I mean, well, Dr. Fleming knows, like when HIV showed up, it didn't matter, whether you're taking care of an AIDS patient or HIV positive patient or someone that you didn't know their status, you wore the gloves, you took all the precautions. It's going to be the same thing here. It doesn't matter which variant of virus we're dealing with. Everyone should be wearing masks, staying 6 feet apart, not traveling, not socializing, staying home when they're sick. Exactly the same thing. And the same, as I mentioned, I was just talking with a school board, should not affect what they do. If the school's going to reopen for in-person learning, they're still going to keep the kids 6 feet apart, wear face masks, check for symptoms. Exactly the same thing, okay? Regarding the vaccine, right now, the feeling is that the vaccine is still effective, regardless of the mutation. In terms of the medications, the medications have kind of a mixed bag on them, but it's felt they probably will still work. I mean, they're all different kinds of medications being used right now, and they work in different ways. So and some of them, one of the really unusual things about COVID is that it goes through different phases, and some of the later phases of the disease is that it has overhyped your immune system to the point it starts attacking yourself and causing the blood clots and other things like that. And those medications are like anti-inflammatory, steroids, things like that. That does not matter what the virus is. It's tempering the response to the virus. So right now, does not seem to be any indication that either the medications or the vaccine needs to be changed, and certainly no change in the behaviors that every one of us needs to be taking. I see, all of you are already working remotely right now. We'll continue to do that regardless of the variant. We just need to double down and make sure we're, and we know we can do it, right? This is our third surge, and each time in between, people worked together, brought the cases down. That's what we need to continue to do. We just can't forget it. I know there's COVID fatigue. People are getting numb with the very high numbers. We got to keep working at it. Okay, it's no difference than crime, poor graduation rates, or whatever. We keep working on it and keep seeing what we can do, bring it down.
Well, Dr. Chen, thank you for the good information and the very important messages you've delivered for us as well. And we all appreciate your efforts on being able to take a few moments out of your time to tell us about what's happening and tell our community things that are important for them as well. Thank you very much. And also thank your team too. Speaking of COVID fatigue, my goodness, we've relied on you all so much, and you've worked so very hard through that. We look forward to bringing this to an end, but no, that's not quite around the corner yet.
Yes, well, thank you very much for having me. I certainly will pass on the thanks to my team. I'm very proud of them. They're just so passionate. They're working 7 days a week, and wonderful team that I have. I'm so fortunate to have them. But anytime I can help you, let me know. You know how to reach me.
All right, very good. Enjoy your evening. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
Well, Council, with that, while we did take a little longer than item, I think the time, at least in my mind, was well spent. So let's move on to our next item, which is public comments. And I want to ask the city clerk if we have anyone waiting to make comments for the council.
There are no additional public comments, Mayor Pro Tem.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that. And with that, then we'll move into considering the consent agenda. And is there a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Keel, I move approval of the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Is there a
Councilmember
second?
Figueroa, seconds.
Very good. We have a motion for approval and a second. Are there any objections to approval of the consent agenda? Any objections? If not, then the agenda is approved. The consent agenda is approved. That brings us to Pierce County population allocation, and which is setting a target. David Swindale is here with us this evening to tell us about a letter that he has prepared on our behalf, and an opportunity for us to comment further on that letter or ask him to send it on its way. David, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of the City Council. The proposed action or council action this evening is to direct staff to send the attached letter, which is in your packet, to the Growth Management Coordinating Committee of the Pierce County Regional Council and AHBL Incorporated, indicating the city's intention to plan to accommodate a population of no more than 40,624 by 2044. As I mentioned last time on January 4th, the Growth Management Act requires that Pierce County adopt a 20-year population allocation that incorporates both the unincorporated area and the cities and towns of Pierce County. The allocation is required to be between the low, mid, and high range projected by the State Office of Financial Management, and the Puget Sound Regional Council's Vision 2050 also requires the 20-year population allocation be consistent with the regional growth strategy. As you know, the Pierce County or Puget Sound Regional Council recently adopted Vision 2040 or 2050 and has allocated, if you would, the distribution of regional growth between 2017 and 2050 by various regional geographies in the South Puget Sound area. The Pierce County Growth Management Coordinating Committee is currently working with AHBL to allocate population to those regional geographies that are required for the comprehensive update, which is due in June 2024. As I indicated on January 4th, the City Council discussed the Vision 2050 growth share for core cities in Pierce County, which include University Place. The City Council preferred a conservative approach to planning for growth. Rather than planning for growth, which is unlikely to occur, the City Council preferred a growth rate closer to our historical trend. Based on the City Council's discussion, staff prepared the attached letter to be sent to AHBL and forwarded to the Growth Management Coordinating Committee. And basically, in the letter itself, it indicates what our projected growth would be if we took our fair share of housing, or rather population growth for the core cities, and that would add an additional 13,892 people between 2020 and 2024. But that is approximately twice our current growth rate. The City Council believes that a limited amount of growth we should limit the amount of growth we're willing to take, and then take a wait and see approach. Whenever the growth rate increases, the city can agree to plan for additional growth before another required comprehensive plan update, and set any ordinances that the City Council or the County Council passes clearly state that the targets are guidelines rather than mandates. Between 2015 and when we adopted our last comprehensive plan amendment in 2020, the city population grew from 31,720 to 33,310, or 1,590, an average of 318 persons per year, which is slightly higher than our 25-year average. So I'm proposing that the City Council or the city should plan to accommodate no more than 40,624 by 2044. And that would be taking that 318 persons per year and multiplying it by the 24 years, because it's 2020 to 2044.
very good. Let's see, I'll take comments from council in just a moment. Before we do that, I had a quick question for our city attorney, Matt Kaiser. Matt, do we just want a simple motion or on this, or is this a issue that is more by consensus?
I would say this is more by consensus. What I would recommend is that you ultimately just say all in favor of sending this out and take it via voice vote. This does not need to be a roll call vote.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Appreciate that. So that's where we're headed with this. If council so chooses to send it off, and I'm going to go back to our round robin process, which would have us ask Councilmember Figueroa, do you have any comments on this issue?
No comments. I'm fine with it being forwarded.
Thank you. Councilmember Keel, do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Keel. So David, when we studied this, we talked a lot about what was the right number for growth, right? And then that conversation led to if we didn't agree with their number, would that blow us out of the water for all the goodies that come from dollars and federal funds and things like that? And so it sounds like we didn't take their number, right? We said,
I think we came up by about 20% above our traditional growth rate, our 25-year trend. I'm proposing about a 20% additional to what would otherwise be a linear trend to 2044. So we're coming, as you indicated, you wanted us to negotiate. We're coming a little up, but we're not going all the way up to their number.
Right, which is where I was going to go. It's still a number less than them, and that's fine. I think you did exactly what we asked, so that I'm not going there with that. But my question is, given that you've done exactly what we asked, and it's lower than their number, what's the feel for the exposure for not being eligible for PSRC funds that come from the federal government, things like that?
I think I think as long as we make an honest effort to show that where we're coming from and why, and we're defending why we think we should do this planning, there's also a consequence of not meeting your number. And then they're coming back to you and say, well, you're not meeting your growth numbers. They're going to hold you to the number you come up with. So it's kind of catch-22. You can't quite get to them, but if you say, we're going to meet your numbers and you don't, then they're asking you, what are you going to do to make that, to get that? And we can't control the market.
Right. Okay. Thank you, David. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Welcome.
Yep, very good. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, do you have comments?
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I have no comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember McCloskey, do you have comments?
All right. Thank you. Well, my question for you, David, is we in our comprehensive plan already have planned for the growth for 2015 in a form-based code.
Correct.
So I think that provides a safety net that if we need to increase our numbers because of the realized population growth, we can easily do that. And so I would maybe put that in your letter as a reference point, saying that we're willing to grow accordingly to our population growth, but we at this point would like to take a more conservative approach.
I think I get what you're saying.
These numbers seem to be more realistic. What, David?
Yeah, I think a way to address that would be to amend the letter such that we can indicate that we believe we have the capacity, the zoning capacity, because of form-based code and the heights, to accommodate ultimately what they seek. However, we really don't think that's going to occur.
Right.
Would that work?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on board with that. At least there is an understanding that we're taking their numbers seriously and we're working with that. And like you stated, there's a capacity for it. And so I think that is a logical and reasonable approach, because I, like Councilmember Keel, I don't really want our funding to be taken away, or other consequences and penalties because they believe we're not playing the game by their rules.
Very good.
Thank you, Dave.
Oops. Councilmember Fleming, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. David, thank you for taking really into consideration the things that the council had requested during the last time we all talked. But, you know, I took what you shared with us last time and kind of processed that a little bit. And the thing that kind of sticks out in my head is this, you know, when we look at the numbers for growth going into the future, there's an assumption that the city has endless area to accommodate that growth. And the last time I looked, our boundaries are pretty finite. They don't grow over time as we have projected this linear growth of the city. You know, unlike some other communities that are not built out, University Place is pretty much built out with the exception of a few areas that are still left there. So, you know, if you just do the math and nothing more, you know, growth in the city wouldn't be linear over time. It would actually be inversely proportional over time as the city kind of reaches the outer limits of what's left of our growth. I'm concerned about committing the city to reach a number based on linear growth that we may not be able to achieve because we just don't have the space to do that. And when you look at it 2040, 2050. How do we achieve that balance? Because, you know, growth will not, you know, we've had linear growth up until now because we were able to do that with the open space that we had that we could develop. That space is disappearing. It's not increasing, it's disappearing, and it's not staying linear, it's decreasing. So how do we make this all work?
Our strategy has been for a number of years, and with the Regional Growth Center and the form-based code, is to concentrate additional growth within the Regional Growth Center. And that's why we did the form-based code, to get the form of architecture and the, if you would, the environment we want to see. But that allowed us to increase the density in the town center. And we've always had an overarching policy as to not to interfere with the character of our existing single family neighborhoods. And you're absolutely right, we're very limited on land. We have just finished a draft of our housing needs assessment and our housing action plan. And we'll be presenting a brief to the city council on March 1st, preliminarily, at least that's on the agenda. Where we can show you a slide that says, you know, back in the 70s, we built like 4,000 dwelling units within a couple of year period. And now we're building maybe 600 within the same type of period. So you are right. We are seeing a diminishing amount of development as time goes on. But that's why we did the town center. That's why, that's where our capacity lies for future growth.
So as we build into the town center then to try to accommodate this 7,000 person growth in a very tight confined area, where is the city's plan for infrastructure to support that? Because we don't have it at the current time. So, and I heard Eric Faison tell us last time we didn't have the funding to build it. So how are we going to balance that?
Well, that's part of taking a more conservative approach to the growth that we're getting, or we're going to agree to get. You're correct. There are still, and you'll see later on this evening, at a study session regarding sewers. There are basically areas that we need to get sewered so that we can potentially, at least like Area 5, which is up by 27th and 67th, we can get some additional capacity there. The roads, the road improvements, part of being a regional growth center is so that we have a better or higher priority to receive funding for transportation. So those are the two big infrastructure issues I think we're facing when it comes to population growth. I do understand that public utilities, and sewer utilities actually have the capacity, the treatment capacity, and Tacoma Public Utilities has the capacity to provide us for growth. It's really getting the distribution system on the sewers and improving our capacity in our transportation system that we'll need to concentrate on. And that's a big part of comprehensive planning. Between now and 2024, we're required to update our comprehensive plan. We'll have to do some analysis to determine what kind of infrastructure improvements we'll need in order to accommodate the growth.
Okay. So based on your numbers that you presented tonight, that, just so the council has a picture in their head, that calls for roughly about 17,000 more cars on our surface roads. So as we, develop our strategies, I would really ask of you and the city manager to really look at a plan on how we accommodate that so that we can do it in a reasonable fashion. Trying to make these decisions siloed doesn't really give us the full picture. And this is no indictment on what you're saying. It's just the process that we use.
Yes.
That we do this in a silo, so we never see the big picture of the true impact of what we're committing to. So I think it's important as a council that we really understand what we're buying into and then have a strategy in place to mitigate that as we move forward to implement it.
That's exactly what our comprehensive plan process will do, and you're exactly right. We set our population projection or our target, and then we figure out what that means when it comes to level of service on our roads. How much more congestion are we going to get? Which intersections are going to fail? What kind of improvements are we going to have to make to various intersections to keep them at a decent level of service? And you're right, you don't get the picture all at once, not until the end of the planning process.
Right. Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. Thank you for the comments, Council. From my perspective, a couple of quick things. One is this is the beginning, not the end of these discussions. And I think at this point, this is, in my mind, an opportunity, or at least an appropriate place for us to begin that discussion, if you will, that negotiation. I expect it'll take some months back and forth. And I'm not sure that any other jurisdiction in this county that is in the same classification that we're in is eager to take on a larger chunk of population for their planning processes either. So, but I think from my perspective, the letter captures what I believe to be our conversation from the other day, a few refinements from tonight, and I'm all for sending it off as one of the council members in tonight's meeting. Staff, do you have direction on that then?
I will just add a paragraph indicating that the city, although with our form-based code, recently adopted form-based code, we do believe we have the zone capacity in order to accommodate more growth. However, as we've pointed out, we really don't think it's likely to happen, and we shouldn't therefore be planning for example, costly infrastructure improvements to accommodate that growth that ain't gonna happen.
Well, David, thank you. I think that has, I believe, captured Councilmember McCluskey's comments and thoughts. Is that the case? I see a nod of the head. Cool, and a thumb up even. All right. So I think we're good to go. And speaking of going, let's move on to our next item where the city manager, Steve Sugg, will keep us posted on what's new and exciting in the neighborhood and maybe some other things.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you, members of the council. Amanda's going to show a photo. Today we received word that the USGA has put out their annual calendar, and I think you recognize this location. It's on the cover of the USGA calendar for 2021. Each year they produce a calendar for all of their major events around the nation, and University Place and Chambers Bay will be in the national spotlight again from May 22nd through the 26th. That's a Saturday through a Wednesday, I believe. This is the four-ball championship. This is the 6th U.S. Amateur Four-Ball Championship. It's a relatively new amateur tournament. It is a national event. There are qualifying, it's a men's qualifying event. Qualifying events are happening around the country. They've been taking place since last September at 52 sites around the country, and they'll conclude, all the qualifying events will conclude by May 3rd. In time for the event, and we'll find out who those members are that actually qualify for this. The championship venue will be at Chambers Bay for this particular four-ball tournament. The stroke play co-host venue will be at the home course in DuPont. Now, you asked about, you're probably wondering, well, what about COVID? Well, last year they canceled the event due to the COVID-19 pandemic because it was, pretty much everything was being shut down around the country. That was in Philadelphia. That event had to be canceled. The year before that, the 2019 Amateur Four-Ball Tournament was held at the Bandon Dunes Old McDonald course. So it is an exciting tournament. It won't be of the magnitude of the 2015 U.S. Open, but certainly it will provide some exciting play. Spectators, obviously there'll be an opportunity for residents and others to see this wonderful tournament come to University Place. So I just wanted to report on that. I have nothing else, Mayor Pro Tem, Council. Thank you.
You're muted, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. I was just, Steve, thank you for that. And I was just commenting on how fortuitous the timing of that is in certain ways. So being on the cover of their calendar, that's great. Councilmember Figueroa, would you like to, do you have any comments that you'd like to make tonight?
No, I do not. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And I'll continue working my way around the horn. And now to Councilmember Keel. Any comments, Councilmember Keel?
Councilmember Keel, I have no comments.
Thank you. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, how about you? Any comments for the good of the order tonight?
Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I have no comments. Thank you.
Very good. And Councilmember McCluskey, it's your turn. Anything on your side?
Yes, so thank you. I thought for a second our Steve Studd was going to tell us that we got the U.S. Open again. That's after Mar-a-Lago was taken out.
Yeah.
But we'll take the foreplay. That's good. Or the ball.
We will. And nice to know we're kind of in their mind. We're in someone's mind at least.
That's right. You know, I was like hoping maybe they'll come true. A couple things. I got a call to join a meeting. The group was called Climate Pierce County, and they are lobbying the cities as well as the Pierce County Regional Council in order to do a resolution and a proposal. It's in regards to controlling the greenhouse gases. So the goal is to have a 45%, as for the 2015 numbers, to have a 45% reduction by 2030, and then a 85% reduction from the 2015 numbers by 2050. And that is going to go apparently before the Pierce County Regional Council. They've talked to the chair, and they've got the vice chair interested as well. So that'll be a discussion that we will have. I know that Lacey and a couple other cities in Thurston County have all adopted this resolution, as has Thurston County. So they will, so that's a conversation for our city, I'm sure, someday in this upcoming year.
Let Can I add to that?
Okay. Yes.
Mayor Belisi and I have a conference call with the leader of that organization on Monday, the 25th at 11:30 a.m., I believe. So we're scheduled to talk to them.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct. 11:30 a.m., Monday, the 25th.
Okay. Sounds good. And then there is a grassroots group that is popping up. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee and Mayor Belisi and I were able to join it. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee and I have been involved in several meetings with this group prior. They're calling, it's an informal group. They're called Embrace Up. And what they're interested in doing is having presentations by subject matter experts coming to the group for on the topic around social justice, bringing our community together, honoring diversity, and making recommendations. And one of the, I bring it up to the City Council's meeting tonight because I just want everyone to be aware that one common thread that was really strong was that our community really needs to come back together. And they had a very strong impetus on cultural events in our future that include all diversity within University Place, the Asian community, the Polynesian, the Blacks, the Hispanics, and they're very curious and interested in seeing those events be part of our University Place events in the future. And a large component of that was that they feel very disconnected to their community. And one of the main reasons was recreation. In the discovery, because there were several youth members attending, as well as a few adults. And they had indicated that recreation was really strategic and important in bringing the community together and understanding each other and having fun and joy in living here in University Place. And aside from that, we all know that recreation was sorely missed, but it is interesting that this group is taking it on themselves to come together to see what they can do to better the lives of University Place residents. And through that, to hopefully make recommendations not only to the City Council, but to other business entities as well. So they're going to take a comprehensive and holistic approach to include the school district as well. So, they're taking on a big, hairy vision right now. So we'll see how that all pans out in the end. And one thing that they noted, that they felt relatively safe within our community, and they had several indications where maybe they didn't feel quite safe, but on the whole, they were about 85% feeling safe with walking about and doing business and going to stores and the markets in UP. So, and with that, I will end my council comments.
Very good. Thank you, Councilor Kleske. Appreciate that. Lots of good information. Councilmember Fleming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. My comments are short, quick, and timely. I just wanted to share with council that I got to graduate today, having received my second COVID immunization. So I don't know what the side effects of round 2 will be like, but certainly to my fellow council members and citizens of the city, if you have the opportunity to get vaccinated, protect yourself, protect your loved ones, protect your friends, protect our community. So that's all I have.
Well, congratulations. Very good. And I certainly agree with your message. All right. Well, thank you. Then, from my perspective, let me try and imagine how Mayor Polisi would deal with this next one if she were present, which is, don't forget about this Saturday. We have a retreat starting at 8:30, going until 1. And remember, you can have anything you want for breakfast as long as you bring it yourself and fix it in your home. We'll be doing the retreat, and just a reminder, I think we're all squared away there. You've had a chance to see the agenda and get ready for that, and we're looking forward to having a productive day. Aside from that, I did receive some information from the Small Business Administration today, as many people did, I imagine, as the SBA, about a new round of the PPP for businesses, new loans for small businesses, those and second loans in certain cases for businesses that have 300 or fewer employees. So those opportunities are back on the table, and your local lender that handles SBA related financing would be a good place to get information for the SBA itself. And with that, I think we're ready to move into our study session. So unless anyone has anything else, I'm going to declare our regular meeting completed, and we're now in a study session. And so with that, we get to talk about the University Place Refuge franchise. And Lisa Fedoruk, along with Matt Kaiser, our city attorney, are prepared to share that. I think Lisa's first up with some information. Lisa, are you ready on your side?
I am ready. Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. And there is a PowerPoint presentation this evening to help walk us through the changes. Thank you very much. So waiting in the wings, just right off camera, is the University Place leadership. We have Roger Gruner, who is the president of UP Refuse, Neil Holden, who's the vice president, and Michael Gruner, who is the production manager, They will make themselves available to answer questions at the end of the presentation this evening. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as you are most likely aware, University Place has 2 franchise agreements for the city of University Place. University Place Refuse is the main hauler within city limits, and a smaller portion is handled by LeMay. The 2 companies have been operating since prior to incorporation, and the city provided franchises to both companies soon after cityhood. To date, largely both franchises mirror each other in terms of language. While there is not explicitly a Me Too clause, they are drafted in such a way that they essentially have the same effect to keep cohesiveness across the city. The franchise that's currently being discussed relates to a franchise that currently is in place and is set to expire on December 31st, 2025. We have been in negotiations with UP Refuse for the 2020 year, and to provide a little walk back in history, you may recall that last year and the year prior, University Place has come before the City Council specifically to request a recycling surcharge. The other changes in the base rates are handled automatically in the current franchise. And at last year's council meeting, while the council was contemplating the 3.13% surcharge, it was at that meeting early in the year, approximately February, where University Place Refuse made the official request that we enter into negotiations. Negotiations under the current franchise language is called for to begin in 2021, but they made a formal request in 2020, and we obliged, and we have held various conversations with them over the course of 2020. Next slide, please. Just to give you an idea of where the boundaries lie, you can see that University Place Refuse covers the large majority of the city. They service approximately 410 commercial accounts and approximately 8,500 residential accounts. And then you'll see the small southeast quadrant of the city that is not highlighted in yellow. That is largely serviced by LeMay. They have 22 commercial accounts and approximately 425 residential accounts. So that's just to give you an idea of the scope of service that University Place Refuse provides. Next slide, please. So as we entered into discussions with University Place Refuse in 2020, we talked about a wide array of different factors. And we have come down to a proposed franchise that touches on 8 major changes. You'll see tonight as we present to you that 3 of those will touch specifically on rates. 3 of those items will also touch on our requests made by the city. And then finally, we'll also specifically talk about franchise length and other sort of housekeeping types of items. This was a franchise that was adopted in 2009. So you can imagine there were quite a few various updates that needed to occur to bring the franchise language into the year 2021. Next slide, please. So the first topic for discussion, specifically as it relates to rates, is a change to how we calculate the base rates. And you may recall from discussions previously last year, we've normally come before you and talked about how the base rates are changed. There are 2 main components that we discuss when we're talking about a change to base rates. The first one is the CPIU. We use the Bureau of Labor Statistics regional application of the Seattle-Tacoma Bellevue CPIU for June to June. And the second rate that is applied is what's called the LRI rate. The LRI rate is the landfill recovery company that provides an area to dump waste. So what currently is provided for under the franchise that the city is operating under now is the base rates are multiplied by 70% of the CPIU for Seattle-Tacoma Bellevue from June to June. 70% of that CPIU gets applied to the base rates. And then on top of that, the new LRI adjustment for the following year is added to the base rates. And then the city administrative fee is applied on top of that. So with those 2 additions, that is how you get your base rate under the current franchise. The new proposed methodology is a slight modification to that. What's being called for in the proposed language is that the base rates remove the previous year's LRI rate from the calculation. Then 100% of the CPIU for Seattle-Tacoma Bellevue for June to June is then applied to those rates. And then the new rate for LRI will be applied, the new rate for the following year then gets applied. That is the change that the franchise proposed language is allowing. What's the end result for this calculation methodology change? Well, there's a mix of changes that occur. Some customers will see a slight increase in their overall bill over the proposed methodology, while other customers and the most common customers on the residential side will actually see a decrease in the proposed language versus the current methodology. And so that first graph that you see shows you everything in red is what would be increased under the proposed language over the next 5 years. Things that are not in red are decreases. And so the most common customer on the residential side that is serviced by University Place Refuse is a individual residential customer that has a 64-gallon toter every other week with recycling, and you'll see that they actually will experience a decrease under the proposed methodology. I wanted to show you what this would look like essentially for the most common customer in terms of the rate breakdown. And there's a couple things that I want to touch on for the second chart that you see here. So again, strictly speaking about residential customers, we have the 2020 rate. You'll see that as an example, the 2020 tipping fee or the LRI rate would be removed. The new LRI rate for 2021 would be added in. Then you would take the CPIU for June to June for this region, which happened to be 0.9%. That would get added, so that adds 16 cents. And then you have what I wanted to touch on next was the final recycling charge of 3.13%. So as I mentioned previously, the past 2 years, University Place has come forward and specifically requested what they call a recycling surcharge that be applied to all rates. In 2020, our request was 3.13%. That specific surcharge is set to sunset on March 1st of this year. The reason for that was the worldwide recycling market had seen a decrease in profitability based on a number of various issues that sort of hit the recycling market in a short period of time. And that was referenced in the FCS report that was provided to you. The major factor was that China was no longer taking the worldwide recycling markets as it once had. Since that time, there are some signs of some recovery. And so UP Refuse is asking that this final 3.13% of a recycling charge be added to all the base rates for this year. With this 3.13% request, they feel that they will no longer need to come before council to make a recycling surcharge. In relation to how the LRI and CPI calculation methodology will affect commercial customers will likely see an increase under this methodology. But again, as for residential customers, the most common will see a decrease, and others will see a slight increase. We're talking a few pennies to approximately 28 cents. Next slide, please. The next increase that University Place Refuse is requesting is an increase to their drop box and truck driver rates and compactor rates. And these are two slightly different services. Drop boxes are larger boxes of particular sizes, and you can see those sizes listed here in the graph that University Place Refuse services. And we asked FCS to conduct a market study to see how their rates stacked up to the rest of the Pierce County average. And they did find that for many of the drop boxes, the rates were below the Pierce County average. And so University Place is requesting that those rates be brought up to the Pierce County average. Now, because of those rates being brought up to the Pierce County average, those commercial customers would see a larger increase than what they normally would see in a regular year. The 377 customers that are currently serviced by UP Refuse is a mix between drop boxes and compactors, but there are about 30 permanent drop box compactor customers. And just to provide you an idea of what drop box increases would look like is over the course of, over the course of 3 years, the total increase for the most common customers that use this service would be anywhere from $22 to $78. So that amount, when divided over 3 years, is an additional increase of about $7 to $26 per year for the next 3 years. And the reason, again, for proposing a 3-year increase is to lessen the shock of bringing up the cost of drop boxes to the Pierce County average. The compactors require a slightly different calculation, and you can see in the graph below that there are currently about 4 customers that are permanent compactor customers. The methodology that would be used for compactors would be taking the cost of the drop box and then multiplying that by the compaction ratio times 88%. Another way of thinking about it is giving them a 12% discount. So you have various various compactor container sizes. Some have a 1-to-1 compaction ratio, others have a 1-to-2, 1-to-3, 1-to-4. The largest has a 1-to-6 compaction ratio. And as you can see from the graph below, 3 of the 4 customers are within sort of the market comparators based on the proposed language. The fourth is outside of the market, and you can see that cost increases at a higher rate than the rest of the market. But again, that's for the one customer who's a grocer who is recently, I guess not as recently, bought out by the internet retailer. They have a 6-to-1 compacted container, which is quite large. So of course, the higher compaction rate, then the more expensive it is. But again, there are not a lot of haulers within Pierce County that services a 6-to-1 compactor. And then just to touch base on the rate increase that would be experienced by compacted container customers, those rates would range anywhere from $172 to the largest compactor rate with a special pickup is $1,740. But again, spread over the course of 5 years, because it is a larger increase, the cost would be spread over 5 years between 2021 through 2025. That results in a $34 increase to a $348 increase per year over the course of those 5 years. And again, that larger amount is for the 6-to-1 compactor with a special pickup included in that cost. Next slide, please. And then the final topic that is specifically related to rates is what's called the Pierce County average rate ceiling. And so there's a request to increase that rate ceiling. And right now what the Pierce County average rate ceiling is, it's a rate ceiling that ensures that University Place refuse rates are tied to the rest of the county. And so when we do the various calculations, we look at the other Pierce County haulers. So we look at Fircrest, we look at Lakewood, we look at Puyallup, we look at Tacoma. And those rates for those various services creates a rate ceiling that University Place Refuse and LeMay, under the current franchise agreement, cannot go above. And so the request is to increase that rate ceiling from 100% of the Pierce County average to 103% of the Pierce County average. The end result is there is a little bit of room to grow. However, the city has held on to that rate ceiling to ensure that we maintain a marketability that's in range with the rest of our neighboring haulers. Next slide, please. So in return for those rate considerations, the city had various discussions with University Place Refuse about enhancements for residential customers. And we have 3 of those highlighted for you, although there are some other smaller ones that have been embedded into the franchise language that we'll talk about shortly. But the first major change for an enhanced service is the introduction of a low-income senior discount. The next enhanced service that would be provided for residential customers is a bulky item pickup service, what we're sort of lovingly calling call to haul. And then the last expanded service is one that is definitely needed given the state of the Tacoma landfill, and that is the expansion of the Saturday refuse drop-off. Next slide, please. So to talk about the low-income senior discount, individuals that are already residential customers, I should say, that already have a 24 or 48 gallon service with UP Refuse, if they are a participant in the Tacoma Public Utilities Low-Income Senior Program, then they can show proof of their participation to UP Refuse, and UP Refuse will grant them a 20% discount to one of those 2 services. And so that is one of the enhanced services that would be provided to low-income seniors if they're participating with TPU. Next slide, please. The next enhanced service, just to provide a little bit more detail, is the bulky waste pickup. Again, what we're calling call to haul. So what this would provide is for residential customers that are in good standing, meaning they're not delinquent on any of their refuse bills. They will be able to call University Place Refuse once a year and set up an appointment to have 5 bulky items removed from their front yard. And bulky items is defined in the franchise. There's size and weight limitations based on that. And bulky items can generally be defined as, common items like dresser drawers, maybe a washer, dryer, even a refrigerator. For most of those items, they would be removed at no additional charge to the resident. The only items that might see a charge would be those that contain a compressor. So for example, refrigerators, those have to be disposed of in a particular manner. And so for those customers that maybe would like a refrigerator to be hauled away from their property, they could still call, they could still have it picked up, but they would be charged at the rate for disposing that item that's found on the rate tariff, but those items would be discounted at 20%. Excuse me. And then finally, the University Place Refuse Company has agreed to provide this service to no less than 300 residential customers annually. Next slide, please. And then finally, we're one slide behind. Can we go to the Saturday waste drop-off? Thank you. So the last service that would be an enhancement is to provide residential customers the opportunity to drop off their waste instead of just Monday through Friday, the ability to go to UP Refuse and drop off waste on a Saturday as well. The UP Refuse would be open the same hours as the recycling services, so around 9 to 1. And essentially, whatever charges are levied during the rest of the week, those would be the same charges that would be levied on Saturday for folks to dump waste. This has become much more important since the city of Tacoma has stopped allowing non-Tacoma residents from bringing in their waste. It started as it specifically related to COVID. It's unknown whether they will maintain that or not, but this would be a welcomed benefit for residential customers that aren't able to get away during the week and maybe have some house cleanup that they're doing on a Saturday. So again, this was an important ask by the city. Next slide, please. Now moving on to the topic of franchise length. This was one where we did have multiple conversations with UP Refuse. And as I had stated earlier, the current franchise goes through December 31st of 2025. The agreement that is in the proposed franchise would begin upon adoption by council, should council choose to move forward with this new franchise. And it would terminate on December 31st, 2035. There is a one-time option to extend the franchise for an additional 5 years through 2040, but that must be mutually agreed upon by both the company and the city. In any case, negotiations for the franchise or any franchise changes would begin in the year 2033. Next slide, please. And then some of the other there we go. Thank you. Some of the other changes regarding the new franchise proposal is, again, modernizing language. The last franchise was adopted by council in 2009. So there were a few things that have changed since then that needed to be updated. We did go back and review various codes and RCWs and made updates to those as they were provided for and referenced for in the franchise. Some other current practices regarding recycling locations that have been in practice for many years were actually added into the franchise language, so that is now included in there. And then other sort of events such as the opportunity to potentially host a paper shredding event, things like that have been added. And then another important factor, which Matt might speak to in a bit, is the addition of updated insurance language. WCIA, of course, is the city's insurance carrier, and they had requested that new franchises carry particular specific insurance information regarding minimum limits of insurance and some other caveats. And so Matt Kaiser worked diligently with WCIA and with UP Refuse to ensure that UP Refuse insurance would meet the needs that WCIA was requesting. And Matt can touch on that in a little bit more detail if you have more questions regarding insurance. And essentially, you know, in closing, staff had multiple conversations with UP Refuse. Staff negotiated with UP Refuse a franchise that attempts to balance, you know, market comparator considerations with the other haulers that are located in Pierce County, with, you know, customer needs and customers' changing needs with the enhanced services, and also sort of keeping in mind, you know, the value of an in-city locally owned hauler. That is less and less common across the country in this day and age. So the full rate study conducted by FCS Group provides a clear picture for what residential and commercial customers can expect moving into the future in terms of rate stability as compared to the rest of the county. In the end, as I had mentioned before, there's an increase. There's a mix between cost increases and cost decreases that will be experienced by the various residential customers. Some increases experienced by commercial customers. However, most of those are related to bringing some of those rates up to the county average. One other reminder that I would like to provide is some of the boutique services that residents have come to love, such as the spring and fall yard waste pickups and waste drop-offs. Those are still in the franchise. We wanted to ensure that some of those boutique services that aren't normally found in other haulers services remain in the city. Those have, you know, it's like clockwork. We get phone calls. Hey, you know, what's the date of these? We put that information in the previously the city newspaper, now the city e-newsletter. But people really look forward to those events. So those are still in place as well. And so all in all, when this comes before council again in the near future, staff is recommending that this franchise is approved as proposed. With that, I'd like to invite UP Refuse to turn on their cameras and unmute themselves, and we are available for any questions that you may have.
All right, well, thank you, Lisa. Thank you for a thorough job on that as well and helping us understand what's going on. And certainly we can have questions for our representative from UP Refuse. Council, we'll go through our regular process for questions starting in a moment with Councilman Figueroa. Also, at the end of this, I would welcome some indication from you whether or not when we get done here, you want to have another study session, or if we're ready to move this on for schedule for consideration. But I'll save that for a little bit later. And with that, I had one other opportunity in case Matt has anything specific he wanted to add. Great, but you're there if we have questions. I appreciate
I've got questions. You know, Lisa said I can talk about insurance, but I don't think you guys want to hear me talk about insurance.
You're very wise as always. So, thank you. Let's see, Councilmember Figueroa, anything you'd like to start us with?
Councilmember Figueroa, basically, staff, thank you for all the work. That was a lot of details that went into this new proposed franchise agreement that I believe really enhances our community services, which is very much needed, especially as it's growing. And so thank you for putting that together. And I think that this new franchise agreement is badly needed. The other one has been around for a very long time. Many changes have occurred. I think it's time for all the services that we have. I'm glad that UP Refuge has the ability to provide those to our citizens. I think some of it has to do that they're a family, a homegrown family from UP that cares about UP, and they're rooted in UP. So they're willing to go out the extra step. I just feel that's part of it. But most importantly, they're business people, and I think that they've given every penny they can to make this franchise good for the citizens. And I really appreciate it. And I don't think that I myself don't need another study session to study this any further. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Councilmember Keel.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Keel. You know, I remember our last conversation with this. I know I had a lot of questions about numbers and the franchise and just a lot of stuff. And I want to thank staff, and I also want to thank UP Refuge for working together. It's very evident that you all have spent a lot of time talking to each other from the presentation, and that's perfect. I think that's something that I needed as a council member to know that has gone on. I will say that I got the packet, at least in my email, showed up on Friday, and I started reading through the packet, and I thought it was something I could kind of get through over even a 3-day weekend, but I wasn't able to. And so there are a lot of numbers, a lot of graphs, a lot of things are highlighted. You know, there's this percent, that percent, 1 point, this 3.5 this, and multiplied by that. I mean, it's just a lot of stuff I have to get through. And I'm not even talking about the report that the outside consultant did for us. I mean, that's another whole thing. So I'm not through the numbers, right? And so I want to have the ability, and I will take that ability to do that this week to get my hot tea and get my comfortable chair and actually print the thing out, so that I'm not looking at a computer, but with paper and just kind of go over and highlight it. So I want to do that. And once I do that, I'll have, I think a better view as to, what my concerns are. Now, I do want to say that, we love UP Refuge. I love UP Refuge. I mean, their name is the name of our city. I mean, you've been around for almost 100 years. The family, you guys have done so many great things for our city, and a lot of citizens, me included, are very appreciative of that. And I think that holds, at least for me personally, it speaks highly of the organization, your company, and it's causing me to want to make sure that that I do what I can do to make sure that this continues to work for you and for our citizens. And so I just want to say that. The big concerns that I have, and I expressed them before, is two things. The big one is the market size. Okay, you're locked into UP, and then you don't even have all of UP because LeMay has a little piece of it, and so I'm looking at rising costs and all of those things, all the things that rise in cost, and then how do you stay upright with these costs rising, but then you're locked into a finite market. And so in order to cover the costs, then obviously those costs have to be borne by your ratepayers. And with a small number of ratepayers, you don't have the ability like a LeMay who's national or statewide or any of those things that can kind of spread those costs over a big number a larger number of customers. I mean, it's just basic business stuff, right? And so I'm concerned about that. I don't know what that looks like in 2035, right? And then I'm concerned about the recycle. Sounds like it's being handled and all that stuff, but when you first came to us, you talked about the rising costs of of recycle, and you painted a picture. And I still have that picture in my head of these barges of recycling in the U.S. that are sitting off the coast of China or Taiwan or something and being sent back to us because they can't take the recycling and the costs are going to go up. So I'm concerned about that. And it may be okay now, but is it always going to be okay? And then how much of this up and down flexing that you're going to be coming to us and the citizens about to make sure that we can keep your company upside right. So I want to pour over those numbers some more. I'm interested in how your thinking is about all that, and maybe some of your long-term planning for your company. And again, not trying to get into your business, but into it enough to know how I can make a decision as a council member for the city about what it is that you want to do. So I'll stop there, but I'm not ready. I want to have another study session to talk about this.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Councilmember Keel. Appreciate that. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee. Always gets you promoted.
A battlefield promotion, great. Councilmember Pro Tem Lee, I'm happy that it looks like we've at least reached some kind of agreement. UP Refuge has been a partner with our city forever. They've engaged in our city both with services that they provided and financially supported civic events, and that doesn't go unnoticed. I'm also want to thank the staff for the hard work that they've put in on this contract, because I think it's mutually beneficial. I do have a question. When you talk about curbside garbage and recycling, is the recycling part of that the same recycling that we have now, or is it something different?
And so who would like to answer that? A staff member or a member of the UP Refuge team?
We can answer that. When we're talking about recycling, it's currently the commingled recycling that's available for folks.
Did you
want to add more, Michael?
Sorry, I'm not quite clear on the question.
Okay. We right now, I guess, we have recycling curbside. That's where we put cardboard and plastics and items like that and are picked up, correct?
Correct.
And that's what you call curbside pickup.
Yes.
So in this chart that we were shown, it said garbage with recycling. That is the same recycling that we are experiencing now, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just for information for the anybody who might be listening to this meeting, I personally had styrofoam left over from Christmas. I had a lot of it. And Tacoma transfer station takes styrofoam refuge. They take glass. They take hazardous material for free. It's just like it was in the past. The only thing that they aren't taking is garbage, trash. So anything that doesn't need to be weighed can be taken as we have in the past over to the transfer station and drop it off. Let's see. I think that's really all I have. I, like Councilmember Figueroa, I think I've been through this enough. I will never be able to understand all the I don't want to say garbage assigned for the contract, but I feel comfortable in moving ahead without another study session. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Pro Tem. And Councilmember McCluskey.
Hey, thank you. I was happy to see some of the additional benefits our UP citizens would gain from this collaborative approach to the new franchise agreement and the early take on the renegotiations. I think that is what UP Refuge had requested to ensure that they can have the fleet replacement items. And I concur with the prior council members that UP Refuge certainly has the heart and love and compassion for our community. And it is also reflected in this franchise agreement as well. I also am excited about in the recycling component of this agreement that there is an expansion to the educational piece. I know that I and UP Refuge have a heart to get those off the ground once COVID has, gone away, and then we can engage with what our plans were prior to last spring. I think that is exciting that at the front end users, which is our customers and our consumers, need to be more engaged to and encourage the businesses to have less packaging materials, so there'll be less items to recycle, especially in this day and age where there's a lot of purchases are made on the internet. And so there's a lot of work that could be continued to do on that front. So I am still interested in that and interested in a partnership with that component as well. One of the things that I know there's one retailer that was mentioned with the 6-to-1 compactor that's going to have a $300 increase per year. Is that per year?
With special pickup, I should add. If they use the special pickup, and Michael can probably better define what special pickup means than I can.
Yeah, because the other rates seem reasonable for the increases, but the 6-to-1 was a large increase. So.
Well, yeah, this is Neil Holden, and what we're proposing is that we're trying to make something that's fair for both sides, and by utilizing our non-compacted container rates, and then whatever the manufacturer of these compactors says their compaction ratio is, then we just do it, based on that compaction ratio. So if it's a 2-to-1 compaction, then it would be twice the rate of the non-compacted. However, we give a 12% discount off of that. And okay. Most of the companies, some of them have like a 2-tiered system, but most of them aren't a linear system like that. And like I say, the advantage of that is that the big heavy compactor that really compacts it down, well, they should pay more than the guy that bought the less expensive one that doesn't compact it very much. And so that's kind of the idea behind that.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Neil. Mm-hmm. And my last question is for Matt Kaiser, because I am interested in the insurance piece to that. And I was just curious about what cost is associated with the adjustments to the insurance from ADWC.
For us, there should be no cost. Now for UP Refuse, there very well may be a cost associated with that. And one of the things, let me just kind of talk big picture here. Every so often, our insurance carrier, WCIA, Washington City's Insurance Authority, pushes out standard contract language, whether it's for our professional services agreements, our construction agreements, or for franchises. And they say, this is the language. They most recently did a push out of that new language. I want to say it was in 2020, but as you know, with COVID time, everything kind of goes goofy. And so among those changes associated with that are changes in, say, for instance, the CGL policies with a raise of the premium rates associated with those, raises in pollution coverage and other sorts of coverage. What they're looking at, at the end of the day, because WCIA is our insurance carrier, they're trying to make sure that we, the city, are covered associated with if something, heaven forbid, happens, UP Refuse gets sued and or we get sued and we have to make a claim, that there's adequate insurance limits in place. To my knowledge, and certainly during my watch, we haven't been sued for anything associated with UP Refuse in the performance of their duties. They can speak to their performance and whatnot. But if we're dragged into such a suit, we need to make sure that there's adequate coverage that protect our institutional well-being. And they need to have that conversation too with their insurance carrier to make sure that their well-being is also covered, so that they can continue to be a healthy, thriving business that provides services to our community. So that's where that sort of language comes into place, together with updating some of the old antiquated, hold harmlessly type language and such. But that is fairly boilerplate language that you're going to be seeing. This is the first of a couple franchises we hope to be rolling out to council throughout the course of 2021. You're going to see similar language, kind of crop up in all of those franchises as we go forward. So that's probably the best answer I can give you at this point in time.
Okay. All right. So no cost to the city, but cost to UP Refuge. And you got Refuge is okay with that. I see big smiles. All right. Okay. Well, thank you for all your hard work and collaboration, both the staff and working with the consultants in UP Refuge on this new update. And hopefully it's be more user-friendly and useful tool as you move into your future endeavors. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I forgot to mention, I'm okay with not having another study session.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. And Councilmember Fleming, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. It's no secret among anyone on the council and the folks that are here tonight that this franchise agreement's long overdue. It's one that I highly expected to have been resolved last year, but I also appreciate and understand the constraints that we've been working with COVID and through other issues. I do want to say, thanks to Neil and Roger and Mike and Lisa and Matt for, truly getting together and not just simply working on a franchise agreement, but working on one that's truly a win-win for both parties. I think the interest of the city is well served here, as well as the interest of a business franchise that has, without a doubt, been a friend to this community since its inception. So I am happy with the results. I believe everyone else is likewise equally happy with it. I don't need another study session. I'd like to move this thing to closure expeditiously and get on with other business that's pressing the city. So thank you for everyone's hard work and tireless efforts on that to bring this to fruition. So that's it.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. And so from my perspective as a council member, a couple of things. First off, I do appreciate that we have retaining the services that we have for our customers, particularly as it relates to our residential customers. And frankly, I'm very pleased seeing that we're enhancing some residential services with Saturday drop-off, something we really do need, and I appreciate having that available in our community and believe that's a great step forward that our residents specifically can enjoy. Also, the bulky item pickup once a year would be great. I think for residents, not everybody has the pickup or the ability or the physical ability to deal with some of this. And this is a great way to help them be good neighbors and being able to take care of the items that they need to get rid of in an appropriate way, and to do that in an appropriate process as well. So great addition. Thank you for bringing that forward for both sides of the team. And then also,
Sorry. Just to clarify, I didn't quite understand when Lisa made the presentation relative to the Saturday drop off here. It would just be the first Saturday of every month, not every Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
That was my understanding as well, but I appreciate the clarity because we do want to be clear to our residents. It's once a month, first Saturday is the proposal.
All right. Okay.
Yep, and a good chance to clarify that. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
And then also the discount for seniors excuse me, I have to clarify in my own mind, if it's seniors or people that qualify for low income discount for TPU's program. Essentially, if they qualify for their program, you'll see proof of that and then offer a 20% reduction. So I have that right?
That's correct.
If they are
That's a nice,
senior.
yeah, good. A nice clean way to do it. Appreciate that as well. I think those are good steps for us. It is not surprising that there's an increase. Indeed, cost of business all around us goes up, and that's all part of it as well. But it seems as though the increase is proportionate to the benefits and to making sure that the company has some likelihood to be financially stable, because we as a community don't really win in this unless you as a business can continue to be here and do the things you have been doing for a very long time. That has really tied you to University Place and the people that make it up. You're an important component of that, as you've heard tonight. We want that to be able to continue when I'm speaking to the UP Refuge folks. I do have a couple of quick questions. I'll try and make them fairly quick. One is, while this does away with surcharges, with the exception of one final surcharge here, does it eliminate future for surcharges? So if there is some need to recapture fuel costs because of whatever reason, something unforeseeable, or the cost of pollution control goes through the roof and there needs to be something done about that, are those mechanisms there to do something about that?
There are, in response to that inquiry. For those of you following along with the franchise agreement, paragraph 17.17 of the agreement provides for other rate changes where if it provides for material hardship in performing the agreement, they have the right to come forward to council.
Okay. Well, we would be, as we were, I believe, careful, reluctant, if you will, but careful certainly, to consider such things outside the franchise agreement. Things do happen, and as I mentioned, it's important that everybody stays financially viable. And a strong case will most likely prevail, as it has in the past. So let's see, that was one. And then there's, in the rate increase for some of the commercial customers, and there, I guess there's a residential component too. There's a 3-year spread of a rate increase and a 5-year spread of a rate increase. In order that those 3 years and 5 years respectively are there to help make that rate a little more palatable, a little more easier to swallow for those that are affected. And I think those are all commercial classes, if I recall right. So is there any consideration, do you just take the rate, divide it by the number of years, and then each year step it up by that number? Or are you actually adjusting as well for the cost of money, for the time value of money in there? So,
well, the way we did it was the goal is to get to the average Pierce County average rate on those ones that were well under, and so we just looked at what the difference was, and this divided that either by 3 or 5, and then we will just add that amount each year for the next number of years specified. And the goal being at 100% when we're in that final year. And then I would like to point out some of those were like, especially the Dropbox rates. Our old methodology for the rate increases was that we got 70% of the CPI on our rates. That worked okay on the residential side and the other services that have a garbage component to them. But the drop boxes, it's just the hauling service. That's all we charge for. The customer pays the dump bill direct. So when you only get 70% of the CPI on that, over time you fall backwards. And
you fall backwards and you're priced out. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And so this new contract remedies that. Once we get to that 100%, we won't have that problem again.
Okay. Very good. Well, thank you. Appreciate the information, and I appreciate both sides of this team, if you will, in terms of the city staff side with some, I think, some very good work, and with FCS to help us, and then also UP Refuge. You've been very open and willing to address issues, and I appreciate that. I think we've made good progress. Let's see, Councilmember Keel, I thought I saw Councilmember Fleming with a hand up too there for a moment. But nope. Okay. All right, Councilmember Keel, did you have something else you wanted to add?
I did, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you. Since it's apparent that we won't be studying this again, I think I want to get my questions in and see if I can get them answered tonight, if possible. One question I have, and again, I want to preface my question with, not trying to get into the business of UP Refuge, but I'm feeling the need to understand at a macro level, or at a level that Michael, you guys are comfortable with sharing with us, kind of your future business model, right, plan. And the reason I'm asking for that is goes back to the question that I posed before is, with costs are always going to rise, raises, employees, all the things, it's just going to rise. And your customer base isn't going to rise, right? And so you're just taking a bigger number and multiplying it over the same number of people, the finite number of people that you have. And then on our side, the citizen side, there's no other place to go. I mean, we have UP Refuge, and that's who we have, right? And so, and the fact that we have this exclusive agreement. So I'm just trying to get just some general feel for how does that work? And maybe my problem is my understanding of how business works, right? I mean, I went to B school, I ran a business. I mean, I get the numbers, and I'm hitting a wall here. And so I'm just trying to get an understanding of how you look at that going forward.
Well, I guess I would say generally we haven't had a tremendous amount of growth for the most part compared to the other parts of the county, obviously, because there just has not been that much land available here. But what I would say is, we've been doing it. This is our 80th year that we just started, and I don't expect that there's a likelihood that we're not going to be able to fund things properly and stay on top of things. I think we've done a fairly good job at doing that. We've got modern equipment. And so I think we've been able to some of that modernization has made things more efficient too. And that's kind of what you do. You look at efficiency, and that's really the key to it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay. Is that anything else at this point, Council Member? We're good?
There's probably a few more. I'm not, I was going to take the time for another go around, but so I'm not prepared to really ask those. Maybe when it comes before us for consideration, I'll have some more questions.
That would be good, or we can always forward some questions with whatever works out best. But I don't want you to feel as though you haven't been able to ask the things that are important to you. We should be able to provide that. So, okay, great. So with that, sounds to me like we're ready to wrap this portion of our study session, get ready for sewers. And Councilmember Keel, could you help me keep an eye on our 9 o'clock deadline in case we need to extend? Okay, great, thank you. All right, appreciate that. And with that, for Roger and Neil and Michael, please, thank you for joining us tonight and being available, and look forward to seeing you in the near future when we should have this back in front of us for action. All right. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoy your night. David, By the way, David, I like that shirt. It's a summer picture. It looks great. That's the shirt on your still for your city photos. So, and your other shirt's okay too. But anyhow, welcome back.
Thank you. That was a Corona beer shirt. That's why it's an Aloha shirt, you know, kind of thing with Corona beer on it. So that was a Cinco de Mayo picture.
Great. It's coming again. Okay. Good for you. Well, great. Well, I think you're going to help us discover about sewers. But before I do that, I see Councilmember Figueroa's hand is up. Did you have something, Councilmember?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This sewer conversation is, I think, a lot longer than what could be left of 20 minutes. And that's with presentation and then with a huge, I think, interest about where we're going with this and what can happen and all the options, alternatives, the processes, the partnerships, and so forth. And I don't think that we should try to stuff it and then think that we're gonna have to come back and study it. I prefer to it be studied in we might need to study 2 or 3 times, but each time should be given an appropriate 45 minutes to an hour, at least a half an hour, but the 20 minutes here left, I don't think is appropriate for the subject matter. And I propose to make a motion to amend the agenda to delay this until we have an appropriate time and we have all 7 council members, because it is a very big subject matter. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Very good. You've heard the motion. Second. All right. We have a motion and a second. And frankly, given the informal nature of a study session, I'm inclined to move this to the next opportunity without a vote, unless we have a council member objecting. I think we'll just do that and reschedule it at the first opportunity that we have, where we'll have 45 minutes to an hour.
Was that work, Mr. Mayor?
Does that work?
If the council's in consensus with your recommendation, then the maker of the motion would need to withdraw, and I would support that.
I would withdraw my motion.
Okay, well,
I said that Councilmember Figueroa withdraw the motion.
All right, very good. Then we'll move this off to when we have the next group of time. And with that, I believe that completes our agenda for this evening. Surprisingly early, though maybe not complete in the work. Council, this is my first time working as your chair. I've enjoyed that. Thank you for that opportunity. Next time, I'll see if I can keep us on schedule. Sorry that we ran long and didn't have time for that last time. But in any case, appreciate your patience and understanding with me. Anybody have anything else before we adjourn it for this evening?
Good job. We'll see you Saturday.
We did it before 9 o'clock, so there you go.
We did it before 9.
No need to extend.
That's true.
We'll see you on Saturday.
Right. We'll see you on Saturday. All righty, great. Take care, everyone. Have a great rest of your week.